Now for bump mapping. Let's add a little to the steep material to give it just a hint of horizontal jointing in the rock. It's easy to overdo bump, so be subtle. Go to Bump Map Texture Operations and create texture. The thumbnail shows a 3-meter wide sample of the fractal noise. Increase the preview to 10 meters and view from to cube. Change the element to multifractal, the X and Y size to 5,000 meters, and the Z to 50 meters. Close out the texture editor and increase the bump intensity to 50%. Save the project and render a preview. Open the Terrain Parameter Editor and increase the maximum fractal depth to 3. Make a preview render. The valley floor looks unnaturally rough, so drop the vertical displacement to 3% and render again. That gives us some roughness without being overly so. Switch back to the real-time view and bring the database editor forward. We're rendering several DEMs that aren't in immediate view, so let's reduce our active DEMs to just the closest ones. Alt-click the foreground DEM and the one behind it. The database will identify these as the AP and AZ tiles. Alt-click the DEMs in the background, they're BJ and AY. The two DEMs that would complete the rectangle in the planimetric view are BI and AO. Select all 6 in the database, that's BJ, BI, AZ, AY, AP, and AO. Add them to a layer and name it Main View. To disable all the 10M layer tiles, select its layer and disable. Activate the Main View layer and enable. Reset the planimetric camera to its new default position. Save your project and make a preview render. We have a much faster rendering time and all the DEMs we need to evaluate changes to the current main camera view. We're going to simplify the Yellowstone environment to 2 ecosystems, a grassland for the canyon floor and a burn regrowth forest for everywhere else. The forest ecosystem will include young lodgepole pine and bleached snags, regrowth after fires that swept through the area about 10 years ago. Add an ecosystem component from the component gallery and load the grassland. It doesn't matter how we answer the scaling box question, since we'll be changing the elevation line anyway. Before we forget, add the grassland ecosystem to the YNP environment. And save the project. Go to the Rules of Nature page in the Ecosystem Editor and let's see where the grassland is going to render. Just about everywhere it seems. The upper elevation line is almost 18 kilometers and the slope range is 0 to 90 degrees. The Material Gradient page shows only one material, grassland, and the Material and Foliage page shows that material to have an understory ecotype and diffuse color texture ground overlay. The ecotype has foliage objects that will slow rendering, so let's disable it for now. We have several ways we could restrict the grassland to the valley floor, but we'll only be looking at the Rules of Nature options. Click and drag around the valley floor margin, and you'll see it has an elevation of about 2,065 meters in this view. To include higher valley elevations upstream, enter 2,200 meters in the Elevation Line field. Save the project, and render a preview. In our ground effect, we used a slope range of 20 to 30 degrees as the transition from flat to steep materials. Enter a maximum slope of 30 degrees to soften the elevation transition and restrict the grassland to gentler slopes beneath the elevation line. Save the project, and render a preview. If you haven't done so already, visit the Interactive Reference Manual and read more about how the rules of nature can be used to control ecosystem rendering and mimic nature.